All right, it's been a little over a month since the last backing of sinew was put on these bows. Gained quite a bit of reflex. And as I was saying, after you get the sinew backing on with a wide flat bow, you want to put a piece of tape on the belly to keep moisture from escaping too fast out of the wood, and then you get cracks running down the bow. It doesn't affect the performance of the bow, but they're not as pretty. Peel this tape off. With juniper, if you have a heavy backing, you look closely along the edge, you might see some wood lifting from the shrinking sinew. I thought I saw some on one of these bows. I guess I'm not looking closely enough right now. Anyways, it's not very obvious right now, but once again, another thing that could happen is from the shrinking sinew on such a soft wood, it'll make little cracks along the edge here, which once again have absolutely no effect on the bow. My personal bow has huge splits because it's got quite a large layer of sinew. I'm going to get into tillering this. Start with the shorter one with a little less reflex than the longer. This is a sapwood only juniper bow. Start with a long string. I've got plenty of extra strings lying around, and this old string is just long enough. Use this rubber glove to protect the wood a little bit. I'm going to have to finish the handle again, of course, because I'm going to put some dents in it into this thing. But here's the tillering stick. See how this bend looks. Definitely need a little work here. With most all hardwoods, you know, you can use a sharp edge, razor blade, edge of scissors, edge of the draw knife. Juniper's so soft that the blades usually just skip and bump along. You can use it a little bit to start, but really the best thing to use is 80 grit sandpaper and files for an area where you need to remove more wood. Use pencil to mark where I want to take wood off. This section right here is bending more than anywhere else in this bow. So we're going to remove a little bit everywhere but here. N-O. stay true to the Ishi style of a bow. I'm leaving a lenticular cross section. It's going to be crowned in the center of the belly and taper towards the edges. Plenty of sandpaper here. This actually removes wood quick enough and safely, so you don't end up with too light of a bow. That's why it's good to get a pretty good floor tiller to have a pretty even bend before you start, before you back it. Anyone who's ever made a good bow before knows that this is a kind of a long, tedious process. You don't want to go very fast, or you're going to end up with a little kid's target bow. Something to remember, something to pay attention to is, depending on what wood you're working to, some wood is toxic. I only work with two kinds of wood sometimes that are toxic, and that's black locust is, I believe it's an eye irritant. It's not good for you to inhale that dust. And yew is one of the most toxic of all woods. So if you're working with that, especially with sandpaper, if you're using a saw, whatever, and there's a lot of dust in the air, you need to wear a mask. Juniper is not toxic at all whatsoever, but if I've got a lot of dust flying around from sandpaper, I still wear a mask. I just don't want to be inhaling dust all day. I also talked about how I let this season for a little over a month. There's absolutely no drawback to letting a sinew bow season as long as you want. If you make a few and you put them away for a year, you know that your sinew is going to be completely dry, and if you have a heavy backing of sinew and you season it or you tiller it after about a month, you'll get the bend even, but maybe a month or two later that bend's going to change a little bit while the sinew continues to season. That's why with sheephorn bows, that 33 to 60% of the thickness of the bow is sinew. It's best to just let those season for 6 months. Then you can tiller it and be done with it. This doesn't have a huge backing. What, 3.5 layers of sinew on this thing. It's not going to change much after the tiller. After I tiller it after a month. I'll keep an eye on it for one more month before it goes off to its new home, but that should be enough time for a thin backing. Alright, after moving a bit of wood with almost all sandpaper, there's really, at 12 inches of draw, there's no part of the bow that's bending more than the other part. So I'm going to increase it to 14 and see if we can see anything. Besides the danger of breaking if you draw it too fast at the weak spot, if it doesn't break in that weak spot, it's going to weaken the wood a little bit. You're going to have a slower bow. And you know, this is a spot in the future that maybe after a few months it's going to start crizzling, and that, you know, it's going to take too much bend, and it could be kind of, you know, a worthless bow on its way to breaking within a few months. So you want to go really slow with this and make sure every step of the way, whether you're drawing it 2 inches and then further along, we're only going to draw it 1 more inch at a time, and make sure the whole limb is bending evenly the whole way through. Slow increases in increasing the draw to check the tiller. 12 inches, it still looks pretty even to me, maybe a little bit of a stiff spot right here, so hit that with the sandpaper. The other limb you can't see right now is slightly stiffer, but it has an even bend. So I'm just going to sand the whole limb for a bit until, reduce it a tiny bit, and then I'll flex it a little bit to work it, to make sure I'm not removing a lot, and then when I go to bend it, it actually takes a little more bend. So remove a little and then work it a little. Of course, not drawing too far, once again. We're up to 16 inches with a long string. Good bend here. This is the widest part of the bow. It's pyramid, so it's widest a little above the handle, and it tapers all the way up. So we want most of the bend to be in the widest part, because the wider wood can handle a little more than the narrow. So I'm going to use a file to remove wood a little bit faster than the sandpaper. Still just going slowly. Take your time, don't rush, it'll be worth it. So I've got a pretty even bend with the long string at 18 inches of draw. Now I think I can safely string it with the right size string for this bow. I like to have it about 5 inches, the string about 5 inches from the belly in the center. That seems to perform pretty well, and it's just my personal liking. Got a normal string on here, and I'm seeing I definitely have enough bend in these tips. So I want to do almost all my removal from here down. This bow is going to bend a very little bit in the handle to keep on par with Ishi style. Too much bend in the handle is kind of an unpleasant shooting bow. It kicks a bit. Very little bend, you don't really feel that. I kind of like very little bend in the handle. I can't even feel any kind of kick or jarring when I release the arrow. So I have no problem with a little tiny bit of bend.